The morning started the same way most of my off-duty days do. Quiet coffee, clean driveway, and the kind of peace you only appreciate after years of dealing with people who can't figure out how to use turn signals. I'm a county sheriff, but when I'm home I try to forget all that and pretend I'm just a regular guy with a brand new SUV I've been saving up for. Shiny black, still smells like the dealership, engine smooth enough to put a smile on anyone's face. I parked it in my own driveway, locked it, and was halfway to my porch when I heard the sound that ruins peace anywhere in America. The sharp click-clack of HOA Karen's authority walk. I didn't even have to turn around. You hear that aggressive heel strike once and it brands itself into your brain like a bad tattoo. But I did turn, and there she was, marching straight toward me with her signature pink HOA binder held against her chest like it was the Constitution. Her hair was in that tight bun that somehow screams, "I cause problems recreationally," and she wore her infamous neon vest, the one she puts on when she's pretending she runs a parking department that doesn't actually exist. "Good morning," I said, already knowing it wasn't. Karen didn't respond with anything resembling a greeting. Instead, she jabbed her finger toward my SUV like she was accusing it of murder. "Your vehicle isn't registered with the community," she snapped. "It needs inspection." Now, normally someone making a fool of themselves this early in the day would get a chuckle out of me, but Karen said it with the kind of confidence that only comes from having absolutely no real authority whatsoever. People like her, they thrive on fake rules, power trips, and making neighbors feel like they signed up to live under her personal dictatorship. And she was relentless. The kind of relentless that makes grown adults peek out their windows and time their grocery runs around not crossing her path. I kept my voice even. "It's my vehicle," I said. "In my driveway. I think it's good." Karen tightened her jaw like I had kicked her HOA binder off a cliff. "Every vehicle in this neighborhood must be registered with the community," she insisted. "This one isn't in the system." "There is no system, Karen," I replied. She gasped like I had insulted her ancestors. "Excuse me? I am the parking enforcement coordinator. There is no such position. Nobody elected her, nobody voted on it, nobody even asked her to do it. She created her own title the same way kids crown themselves kings of couch fort kingdoms." "Karen," I said slowly, trying to keep my coffee from getting cold, "I'm off duty. I'm enjoying my morning. Let's not start this." "You're ignoring official HOA procedure," she snapped. Her tone had shifted from mildly irritating to the kind of pitch dogs might actually hear from 3 blocks away. I could feel the irritation crawling up my spine. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want paperwork. I didn't want to spend my day explaining the concept of private property to a woman who thinks owning a clipboard makes her a federal agent. So I did the only logical thing. I ignored her. I turned around and walked toward my porch. That, according to Karen, was my greatest sin. Behind me I heard her let out this dramatic gasp, the kind teenagers make when their phone dies mid-TikTok. "You can't walk away from me," she shouted. "You are in violation." I didn't turn around. I kept walking. But I could hear her flip open that binder, shuffling pages like she had a warrant in there. She absolutely did not. She had printer paper with clip art logos she downloaded from Google Images and rules she typed herself in 12-point Times New Roman. "You haven't heard the last of this," she yelled. "Your SUV is subject to inspection, and I am filing a formal report." I opened my door, stepped inside, and shut it gently, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a slammed door. Through the blinds I watched her stomp around my driveway like a malfunctioning Roomba. She circled my SUV twice, scribbling notes like she was conducting a crime scene analysis. She crouched down, inspecting the tires with all the seriousness of a bomb squad tech. At one point she laid her hand dramatically on the hood like she was comforting it after trauma. I just stood there in my living room, coffee in hand, wondering how someone could have so much time and so little chill. This was Karen's whole personality. She had ticketed kids' bikes for blocking visibility. She had slapped violation notices on lawn chairs. She once fined a neighbor because their garden gnome clashed with community standards. So the fact that she was now fixated on my SUV wasn't surprising. Annoying? Absolutely. Predictable? 100%. But even I didn't realize just how far she'd take this obsession. I thought she'd cool off, go back home, and write an angry paragraph in the HOA newsletter nobody reads. I thought the worst I'd get was a nasty voicemail. But this was Karen. And this was only the beginning. Because in her mind, me ignoring her wasn't just disrespect. It was war. The next morning, before I even had my first cup of coffee, I noticed movement through the blinds. Someone crouched low beside my brand new SUV. At first I thought maybe a package had rolled under the car or a neighbor was picking up a dropped AirPod. But then I saw the hairstyle. That unmistakable, tightly wound HOA bun that somehow screamed both power trip and I rehearse arguments in the mirror. I sighed, put my mug down and stepped closer to the window to be sure. Was Karen. And she was not just standing by my vehicle. She was hunched over my driver's side door, fiddling with something shiny. When she shifted slightly, the sun hit a metal object in her hand, and my jaw legit dropped. She was holding a ring of keys so massive it looked like something a middle school janitor would carry. Dozens of keys clanked together like she was running a medieval prison. I stared, blinking, wondering what kind of wild cartoon logic I was witnessing this early in the day. Then she tried one. She actually shoved a random key into my SUV door lock and twisted it like she owned the thing. The key barely fit, scraped the metal, and made the most painful grinding noise I've ever heard. My eyebrow went up so hard I swear it touched my hairline. She didn't stop. She went down the entire ring, jamming one key after another into the lock with the confidence of someone who truly believed the universe should bend to her HOA bylaws. Half the neighborhood joggers heard the metal screeching and slowed down, probably thinking someone was breaking into a car. And to be fair, they weren't wrong. Karen straightened up, red-faced, out of breath, and furious at the SUV? The laws of physics? Reality? Hard to say with her. Then she yelled loud enough to echo off the houses, "This car is illegal. The master key doesn't register it." I swear even the birds stopped mid-tweet. I pushed open my front door and stepped outside calmly, letting the screen door clang behind me. "Karen," I said, voice low, "what exactly are you doing?" She spun around like a villain caught monologuing. "I am attempting to verify your vehicle's eligibility," she snapped, shaking her ridiculous key ring at me like it was a badge of office. "All shared community vehicles respond to the master key. Yours does not. That means it is unregistered, or worse, unauthorized." I blinked once. Twice. "Shared vehicles?" I repeated, trying not to laugh. "Karen, this is my personal SUV. You know, the one parked in my driveway. Where it belongs." She gasped as if I'd confessed to a felony. "Sir," she barked, giving me that condescending tone she uses on teenagers who skateboard too close to the sidewalk, "all vehicles must submit to HOA verification protocols. If your vehicle is resistant to key testing, it is not compliant." "Key testing?" I echoed. "You mean you sticking a bunch of random keys into my door lock?" "That is the community master key ring," she said, enunciating every word like she was reading me my rights. "Every compliant vehicle opens with at least one of these keys." "That's not how anything works," I said flatly. She ignored me completely. "Your refusal to participate endangers the harmony of the neighborhood," she announced as if she were speaking to a news crew that absolutely wasn't there. "Now hand over your real keys for verification." I laughed. Out loud. Couldn't help it. "You want me to hand you the keys to my brand new SUV so you can what? Try to open every lock on it like it's a puzzle box?" "It is procedure," she snapped. "If you have nothing to hide, you should cooperate." "Karen, I'm not giving you my keys," I said. "Not today, not ever." She stomped her foot like a toddler denied candy. "If you refuse, I will be forced to report this vehicle as suspicious." "It's suspicious," I said, "because your keys don't magically open it?" "Yes," she said without an ounce of self-awareness. "The master key system has kept this neighborhood safe for years." "There is no master key system," I replied. "There never has been." She lifted her chin, eyes narrowing. "Incorrect. I personally created it." "That's the problem," I muttered. Karen crossed her arms, the key ring dangling from her fingers like the world's worst wind chime. "This is your last chance," she threatened. "Give me your keys or I am calling 911 and reporting a non-compliant vehicle." I stared at her, stunned at the pure audacity. A jogger passing by whispered, "Bro, she's unhinged." Karen whirled around, barking, "Stay out of official HOA business." The jogger sped up immediately. Then she turned back to me with this triumphant, smug little smirk as if she had cornered me. "So," she demanded. "Keys. Now." "No," I said simply. Her eyes widened, and then she erupted into this shrill, frustrated screech, like an eagle fighting a lawnmower. "Fine. I will handle it myself. Don't blame me for the consequences." She stormed down the driveway clutching her fake master keys like a weapon. And I realized something important. Yesterday she was annoying. Today? She'd crossed straight into deranged territory. And I had a bad feeling the show was just getting started. Karen didn't miss a beat after I refused to hand over my keys. No. She pivoted faster than a politician in election season. 1 second she was demanding entry, The next she was digging into her HOA binder like she was pulling out the US Constitution. Except instead of anything legal, she produced her classic weapon of choice, a pink HOA violation slip. The moment I saw that neon sheet, my stomach sank. Nothing good ever comes from pink paper in this neighborhood. With the confidence of someone who lives in their own universe, she clicked her pen, pressed the paper against my windshield, and started writing like she was issuing a federal warrant. Her handwriting was all aggressive loops and sharp angles, like she was stabbing the paper with each letter. When she finished, she slapped the slip onto the glass so hard it sounded like a gunshot. Stolen vehicle, will be confiscated. I just stared at it. Stolen? Confiscated? My SUV? The same SUV I had literally driven home from the dealership less than a week ago? I blinked slowly, trying to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from lack of caffeine. But nope. It was real. Karen had successfully invented the world's dumbest accusation on official HOA stationery. Karen, I said, rubbing my temples, my car isn't stolen. She gasped dramatically, clutching her pearls like a daytime soap villain. Of course you'd say that, she screeched. Criminals always deny wrongdoing. This is why the HOA exists, to protect the community from suspicious activity. You trying random keys in my car was suspicious, I said, pointing at the scratches she left on the lock. She ignored me completely, marched in front of the SUV, and planted her feet shoulder-width apart like she was a bouncer at a nightclub. This vehicle will not be leaving the premises, she declared. Not until the HOA finishes its investigation. Karen, move, I said, trying to walk around her. No, she snapped. You cannot leave. This car is now under HOA seizure. I stared at her, stunned. You can't seize my car. You're not law enforcement. I am HOA enforcement, she said, sticking out her chest like that meant anything. And this vehicle violates community visibility zone regulations. Therefore, ownership defaults to the HOA. Visibility zones? I repeated. You mean, the driveway? Yes, she barked as if she'd just delivered the world's smartest comeback. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Karen, the HOA doesn't own anything of mine. Incorrect, she said proudly. Any property visible from public HOA pathways is considered shared. I opened my mouth then shut it again because honestly, I had no words. She was making up laws like she was running a fantasy kingdom. But what really sent the situation into sitcom territory was the sound of screen doors opening. 1, then 2, then 3. Within seconds, neighbors started appearing on porches, leaning on railings, sipping coffee, whispering to each other like they were watching the season finale of a reality show. Kids peeked around garage doors. A jogger stopped mid-run. Mrs. Hargrove, the gossip queen, walked out with a bag of popcorn she definitely wasn't eating before this moment. Great. Perfect. Fantastic. Karen had an audience, and that meant she was about to turn the crazy dial all the way to 11. Karen noticed the attention too, and oh, she thrived on it. Her chin lifted, her shoulders straightened, and she spoke louder, projecting like she was addressing a town hall meeting. Neighbors, she announced, please note that this vehicle is currently classified as community property until verified. Someone muttered, there she goes again. Another whispered, bless his heart. Karen continued dramatically, holding up the pink violation slip like Moses presenting the tablets. This vehicle is not registered, she shouted. The master key test has failed. A teenager snorted. Master key test? What is she talking about? Karen spun around and pointed at me. This man, she yelled, refuses to cooperate with community safety protocols. I held up a hand. Karen, I'm literally the sheriff. I don't have to cooperate with made-up HOA protocols. A ripple went through the crowd, gasps, snickers, a couple of oh damn reactions. Karen's face twisted but she kept going. You are obstructing an active HOA investigation. I'm obstructing you trying to break into my car, I said dryly. There's a difference. She stomped her foot again, her signature move. This isn't over, she barked. Either you hand over your keys and submit to HOA verification, or I will call 911 and report a stolen vehicle. You're really going to call 911, I said deadpan, to report a sheriff's own car, stolen from his own driveway. Yes, she said confidently. Because the rules apply to everyone. Even you. I looked at the growing crowd. Oh great, I muttered under my breath. The circus officially had an audience. And Karen? She was just getting warmed up. When I finally walked back outside with my morning coffee, ready to pretend the world was normal again, I froze halfway down the driveway. Karen was standing dead center in front of my SUV like she was defending the last slice of cheesecake at a church potluck. But this time she wasn't just blocking the car, she was on the phone. And not just any phone call. No. She had that tone. I'm reporting something outrageous and the world revolves around me tone. I instantly recognized the words drifting out of her mouth. It was the unmistakable cadence of a person calling 911 with absolute misplaced confidence. My jaw literally dropped. Yes, hello, she said dramatically, pacing with wide, exaggerated steps like she was performing on Broadway. I need officers immediately. There is a suspicious man attempting to break into a community-owned SUV. I blinked. Did she just say community-owned? My SUV? The one with my county sheriff parking decal still on the bumper? She kept going. Yes, ma'am, he is currently standing near the vehicle. No, he has not complied with HOA verification procedures. He is ignoring direct safety commands. I raised my coffee cup slightly as if toasting her. She pointed at me like she'd spotted a wild animal. There. See? He's still here. I couldn't help it, I started laughing. Not a little chuckle. A full, disbelieving, there's no way this is my actual life right now laugh. This woman was seriously trying to report me to emergency dispatch for breaking into my own car. And she wasn't even being sneaky about it. As she paced, she exaggerated every word with theatrical body language, one hand clutching her HOA binder to her chest like a bulletproof vest. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so ridiculous. Yes, operator, he looks extremely dangerous, she continued. He's tall, muscular, wearing sunglasses. Very intimidating. I pushed my sunglasses up my nose and sighed. Karen noticed and dramatically gasped into the phone. He just adjusted his disguise. I almost spilled my coffee. She turned on her heel, glared at me like I was the villain in a poorly written play, and yelled across the driveway, "Don't you dare run. Police are on their way." I'm literally not going anywhere, I said, sipping my drink. It's my driveway, Karen. She covered the phone and hissed, "Criminals always say that." Behind her, two neighbors stopped walking their dogs and stared like they'd just walked into a live TV episode. One whisper laughed, "No way. Is she actually calling the cops on him?" Karen whipped back to the phone. "No, operator, he's still here. He's attempting to intimidate me with beverage-based threats." I coughed mid-sip. Beverage-based threats? Was my coffee now a weapon? She continued pacing with the intensity of someone describing a bear attack. He is standing dangerously close to the stolen vehicle, refusing to surrender the keys. I believe he's about to flee. Send units fast. I spoke loudly enough for the dogs, the joggers, and the entire HOA block to hear. Karen, I'm the sheriff. She waved her hand dismissively, still talking into the phone. Operator, he is now impersonating law enforcement. I rubbed my forehead. Karen. I said don't move, she screamed dramatically, nearly tripping over her own flip-flop. She caught herself and pressed the phone tighter to her ear. Yes, operator, he's getting agitated. I think he knows I've exposed him. I looked at the sky, silently asking the universe what karma I was paying off right now. By now 3 more neighbors had come outside and someone was recording on their phone. A kid on a bike yelled, "Karen's losing her mind again," and his mom shushed him but not very effectively. Karen kept narrating like she was a nature documentary host describing a hostile animal. He's staring at me, operator. He has that look. The kind criminals get. The look of guilt. I took another sip. This is hazelnut, I said flatly. The only guilt I have is drinking it too fast. She slapped her free hand against her forehead. He's rambling. Classic attempt to destabilize the witness. The jogger from earlier chimed in, Karen, he's literally the sheriff. We've all seen his patrol car. Karen spun around, eyes wild. He could have stolen that too. That did it. A ripple of laughter spread across the sidewalk. Someone snorted. Someone else whispered, she's gone full supervillain. Karen pointed at me again, waving her HOA binder like a weapon. You will be arrested. You cannot escape HOA justice. Karen, I said calmly, you called 911 on the county sheriff for standing next to his own vehicle. She raised her chin proudly. Then I just saved this community from corruption. I swear, even the dogs were judging her at this point. I leaned against my SUV, sipping my coffee, absolutely done with her nonsense. She kept pacing, ranting, and reporting made-up crimes until the 911 operator finally told her to remain on scene and wait for responding officers. She smiled like she'd just won the lottery. This was going to be one hell of a comeback moment when the patrol units showed up. I heard the sirens before I saw the cars, that familiar rising wail echoing off the neighborhood's perfectly trimmed hedges like some kind of suburban anthem. Karen straightened up the second the sound reached her ears, shoulders back, chin raised, HOA binder clutched to her chest like she was presenting evidence to the Supreme Court. She actually fluffed her hair like she was prepping for a press conference. I stood there leaning casually against my SUV, sipping my coffee, watching the circus unfold with the same energy as a guy watching a slow-motion car crash. 2 patrol units turned the corner and rolled down the street, lights flashing but no urgency in the speed. They pulled right up to my driveway, stopping in perfect sync. Karen immediately sprinted, toward them, waving her arms like an air traffic controller having a breakdown. Officers! Officers! She screeched. He's right there. Arrest him before he escapes. Escape where? To my front porch? One of the officers opened his door and stepped out. I recognized him instantly, Officer Dunbar. Fresh haircut, shiny boots, still had that eager I love paperwork energy. The second door opened and out stepped Officer Lewis, older guy, mustache thick enough to qualify as a small woodland creature. Both of them walked toward us. Karen cut them off mid-step like she wanted to tackle them with information. "Thank God you're here," she said, panting dramatically. "This man is attempting to break into a community vehicle. He refused verification. He is dangerous and aggressive and..." Officer Dunbar held up a finger in the most polite, "Please stop talking" gesture I've ever seen. "Ma'am, could you, just hang on a sec?" "No. You don't understand," Karen shrieked, blocking their path. "He is impersonating the sheriff. He threatened me with a beverage. Officer Lewis stepped around her, squinting at me. His mustache twitched as recognition hit him like a brick. "Sheriff? Is that you?" Dunbar blinked, then grinned. "Oh my God, sir." He let out a choked laugh like he was trying to hold it together but failing miserably. Then he snapped into a salute so sharp it could slice drywall. "Good morning, Sheriff." The entire neighborhood went dead silent. Karen froze like someone had hit her with a freeze ray. Her jaw literally dropped. Her eyes ping-ponged between me and the officers like she was watching a ping-pong match she didn't bet on. I gave a small nod. "Morning, boys." Dunbar burst out laughing. Full-on doubled over, hands on his knees, trying not to drop his radio. Lewis shook his head, chuckling under his breath. "You gotta be kidding me." They both turned toward Karen like they were about to break the news of a lifetime. Karen blinked, throat bobbing like her whole worldview was collapsing. I don't understand," she said weakly. He told me he was the sheriff." "I am the sheriff," I said, sipping my coffee. "I literally work with these guys every day." Dunbar wiped a tear from his eye. "Ma'am, you called 911 on our boss." Lewis crossed his arms, staring at her with a look only an exhausted cop can master. "Ma'am, this is the sheriff. The actual sheriff. The one whose name is on half our paperwork. The guy who signs our evaluations. The guy who trained half the department." Karen's voice cracked. "This is a misunderstanding?" Lewis raised a brow. "A misunderstanding?" He motioned dramatically to my SUV. "You falsely reported a stolen vehicle, attempted to access said vehicle with a random key ring, accused a homeowner of impersonating law enforcement, and called 911 claiming he was fleeing the scene. In his own driveway." Dunbar added, "And you told dispatch he threatened you with, what was it?" He flipped through the call log. "Oh right, beverage-based intimidation." I held up my coffee cup and shrugged. "Hazelnut. Terrifying stuff." One of the neighbors snorted so loudly it echoed. Karen's face went through 12 shades of panic, humiliation, and denial. He didn't identify himself. Lewis stared at her like she'd announced she was the Queen of England. "Ma'am, he didn't have to identify himself. I'm pretty sure you saw the sheriff's badge on the back of his SUV yesterday when you were photographing people's trash cans." Karen sputtered. "This is harassment. A coordinated attack on the HOA leadership. I was enforcing community rules." Dunbar muttered, "Lady, this is an HOA street, not the Pentagon." Karen tried one last desperate attempt at dignity. Well, I had reason to believe." "No," I cut in calmly. "You had reason to leave my property alone." The silence was brutal. Lewis cleared his throat. "Sheriff, how do you want to proceed?" Karen whipped her head toward me, eyes wide like she suddenly realized her fate depended on a man she'd just accused of grand theft auto and coffee-based terrorism. I took a slow sip, savoring the moment. "Document it," I said. "All of it." Karen's knees visibly wobbled. "And then," I added, We'll talk about the consequences of misusing emergency services. Karen gasped like I'd sentenced her to life in prison. Lewis nodded. Yes, sir. Dunbar clicked his pen. Ma'am, we're gonna need you to stay right here. Karen's voice dropped to a tiny squeak. This is not how I expected today to go. I smiled. Ma'am, you called 911 on the sheriff. And half the neighborhood erupted into laughter that she'll never live down. The moment the laughter faded and the officers got their composure back, the tone shifted. Dunbar pulled out a small notebook with the seriousness of a man about to start an audit, while Lewis adjusted his duty belt and walked toward Karen with the slow, measured steps of someone mentally preparing for nonsense. Karen sensed the air change too. Her face tightened, lips pressing together like she was trying to physically hold in her panic. It didn't work. Ma'am, Lewis said, clearing his throat, we need to talk about what actually happened here this morning. His voice wasn't hostile, but it carried that heavy, official weight, the tone cops use right before someone's day goes from bad to consequences. Karen blinked too fast. About what? She squeaked. Dunbar flipped a page. Let's start with vehicle tampering. That wasn't tampering, she snapped. That was an authorized HOA lock compatibility test. Lewis raised a brow. By jamming a random key into someone else's car door? Karen doubled down instantly. Yes, I have the authority. The HOA gives me full access privileges to all vehicles parked in the visibility zone. I couldn't help it, I snorted. A neighbor 2 houses down whispered, she's cooked. Lewis didn't smirk, but his mustache twitched. Ma'am, unless you're a locksmith, a mechanic, or a police officer executing a warrant, you cannot legally test key compatibility on anybody's vehicle. Ever. He made a gesture toward my SUV. Brand new car. Expensive. You could have scratched the lock cylinder clean off. Karen scoffed dramatically. If the key didn't fit, that proves the vehicle is non-compliant. Dunbar looked at her like she was speaking Martian. No, ma'am, that proves the key isn't for the car. That's it. She crossed her arms. Well, that's your opinion. Lewis rubbed the bridge of his nose like a man questioning his life choices. It's actually state law, ma'am. Before Karen could launch into whatever rant she was cooking up, Dunbar read off the next point. False reporting to emergency services. Karen gasped as if personally offended. That was not false. I called because there was a suspicious man breaking into a car. That man, Dunbar said, pointing at me, is your sheriff. Karen threw her hands up. How was I supposed to know that? He was wearing civilian clothes. Lewis's patience snapped just a little. Ma'am, you live in a suburb. Not the FBI. People wear civilian clothes sometimes. More neighbors drifted out onto porches, filming like it was the season finale of a trashy reality show. HOA Karen and the Bad Decisions. Episode 9. Dunbar continued, flipping another page. Interfering with law enforcement. Karen choked. Excuse me? You obstructed an officer, he said, by misidentifying the sheriff as a suspect and attempting to block our access to him. Karen sputtered like a lawnmower on low fuel. I was doing your job for you. Lewis shook his head slowly. No, ma'am. That's exactly what you were not doing. A woman filming from her lawn whispered, she's losing it, and Karen heard it. Her head whipped around so fast you'd think she popped a gear. She pointed at me, shouting, he's manipulating you. He's corrupting law enforcement. This is police corruption, plain and simple. The neighborhood collectively gasped. Oh, she did not just go there. Lewis took one long step closer, voice at the exact volume that says someone is officially out of rope. Ma'am, accusing the sheriff of corruption because you tried to open his car with a mailbox key is not helping your case. Karen's whole face flushed red. I have authority, she screeched. I have the master key. And with that, she yanked up her giant key ring like Excalibur. Lewis calmly reached out and took the ring from her hand. He looked it over for 2 seconds and held it up between 2 fingers like it was a set of props from a dollar store. Ma'am, these are for padlocks and mailboxes. The entire street exploded into laughter. Even Dunbar let out a short bark before catching himself. Karen's mouth fell open. That is a government-issued access set. Lewis examined them again. Ma'am, one of these literally says, pool shed in Sharpe. And this one, Dunbar added, holding up a tiny brass key, is for a luggage lock. Karen's eyes went wild. She spun in a frantic circle, arms flailing, yelling, and oh, you're all wrong. This is a setup. You're all in on this. This is retaliation for my leadership. A neighbor across the street yelled, Leadership? You fine me for having a yellow porch light. Another added, "You tried to measure my grass with a ruler." Phones were out everywhere now. People recording, zooming in, whispering, narrating the meltdown like sports commentators. Karen threw her arms toward the sky. "This whole police department is corrupt. The HOA will hear about this. I will get you all removed." Lewis snapped his notebook shut like he'd hit bingo. "All right, ma'am. We're officially documenting everything, including your behavior." Karen froze. You can't do that." "We can," Lewis said. "And we are." Dunbar clicked his pen, smirking. "Smile for the camera, ma'am. The neighbors already got you trending in the cul-de-sac." Karen let out a scream somewhere between a tea kettle and a tornado siren, and that was the exact moment everyone realized this was not going to end well for her. By the time word spread about Karen calling 911 on the sheriff and getting caught with her dollar store master keys, the HOA board finally realized they had a full-blown public relations dumpster fire on their hands. Folks in the neighborhood were buzzing like someone kicked a hornet's nest, whispering on Nextdoor, sending screenshots, posting videos, and basically treating the whole situation like a community-wide Netflix binge. The board knew if they didn't act fast, they'd look just as goofy as Karen. So they called an emergency meeting at the clubhouse that same evening, and the turnout was insane. Packed wall to wall, neighbors standing in the back, people clutching iced coffees like they were settling in for a courtroom episode. Karen strutted in wearing her pink HOA blazer like she was walking into Congress. She plopped her binder down on the table and said, "Let's make this quick. I have violations to process." The room groaned collectively. The board president, Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses in that way middle-aged men do when they're about to drop bombs. "Karen," he said, slow and serious, "we need to address several concerns regarding your conduct." Karen scoffed. "Which conduct? My leadership? My dedication? My enforcement of community standards?" Someone in the back muttered, "Your insanity," and half the room tried not to laugh. Henderson opened a folder stuffed with papers. "We have received complaints about your use of unauthorized master keys." The crowd murmured. A neighbor whispered loudly, "She tried to break into my Jeep with a mailbox key last month." Another added, "She tried mine too. Said it wasn't community compliant." Karen shot them both a death glare. Those were routine checks. Henderson continued, unfazed. "We also have reports of phantom parking rules, none of which were voted on, documented, or even real." He held up a sheet labeled Karen's Parking Standards 3.0, and the room burst into laughter. Someone yelled, "You made up a rule about tire angles." Karen threw up her hands dramatically. "Precision matters." Then Henderson flipped to another page. "You've harassed residents repeatedly, including approaching people in their driveways, interrogating teenagers about car eligibility, and attempting to perform vehicle inspections without permission." A woman in the front row raised her hand. "She tried to fine my son for washing his car in our driveway." Karen fired back. The water runoff was entering community soil. The board vice president, a soft-spoken older lady named Ruth, adjusted her cardigan and leaned into her microphone. "Karen, there's more. You've called 911 12 times in the last 3 months." The crowd gasped. Henderson added, "All non-emergencies." A guy near the window said, "She called 911 on my barbecue." Another chimed in, "She called 911 on my Halloween decorations." A third yelled, "She called 911 because my car was too shiny." The room was practically shaking from laughter. Karen slammed her fist on the table. "I was protecting the community." Ruth calmly replied, "Karen, you tried to register a neighbor's SUV as HOA property and nearly caused a police incident." And just like that, the room went silent, the weight of the sheriff's involvement dropping like a brick. Karen's face turned a shade of red not found in nature. She pointed at me in the audience. "He provoked me. He was non-compliant. He refused inspection." I raised a brow. "You jammed a pool shed key in my door." The room erupted again. Henderson finally sighed like he was tired of fighting the tide of stupid. "Karen, the board has reviewed everything. We cannot allow this level of misconduct, overreach, and reckless behavior to continue." Karen's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" Ruth looked her dead in the face. "We're voting to suspend your authority." Karen gasped so loudly you'd think she'd been stabbed. "Suspend? You can't suspend me. I am the HOA." A guy shouted from the back, "Not anymore, you're not." Another yelled, "Pack it up, Karen." Someone else recorded everything, whispering, "This about to go viral." Henderson read the vote results. Unanimous. Karen froze for a half second before launching into full meltdown mode. You'll regret this. This community will fall apart without me. None of you appreciate my service. Neighbors booed, cheered, whistled. Some even clapped like it was a championship game. Karen stormed out of the clubhouse and stomped to her car, shouting into the wind, "This isn't over." She sped off down the street like she was fleeing a crime scene while half the neighborhood stood outside waving goodbye like she was being exiled from civilization. And for the first time in months, the community felt like it could breathe again. The next morning rolled around with the kind of quiet calm you only get after a neighborhood finally survives a full-blown Karen hurricane. The sun wasn't even fully up yet, but half the cul-de-sac already knew Karen's fate. Word in this community travels faster than Wi-Fi, and after last night's HOA revolt, people were practically refreshing their doorbell cameras just hoping to catch a glimpse of Karen doing the walk of shame. But the real fireworks came when the county officers followed up on her little 911 stunt. They didn't show up guns blazing or anything dramatic. They just knocked politely, asked her to step outside, and handed her a stack of paperwork thicker than her fake HOA binder. The first form she received was a hefty fine for filing a false police report. Karen tried arguing, of course, waving her hands like she was conducting an orchestra of nonsense. But I was threatened. The SUV wasn't compliant with my master key. He refused inspection. The officer stared at her like she'd just confessed to believing in unicorn parking permits. "Ma'am," he replied, monotone and done with her, "that's not how any of this works." The neighbors nearby pretended to water their lawns while shamelessly eavesdropping. Then came the second document, mandatory HOA ethics training. That one almost made her combust on the spot. Karen screeched, "I am the ethics. I set the standards." The officer blinked slowly. "Ma'am, that's exactly why you need it." Somebody across the street snorted so loud they had to pretend it was a sneeze. After that, she was handed the third and most delicious piece of justice. A formal trespass warning banning her from stepping foot on the narrator's property ever again. The look on her face could have powered the entire neighborhood if the HOA ever decided to go solar. "You're giving a trespass warning to an HOA president?" she barked. The officer replied, "Correct. And if you violate it, you'll be arrested." Karen sputtered so violently she sounded like a lawnmower choking on a pine cone. And then came the cherry on top, community service hours. When the officer explained she'd be spending several weekends picking up trash around the county, Karen let out a sound that can best be described as a balloon deflating aggressively. "This is retaliation," she yelled. "This is a conspiracy." But the officer had already moved on to pointing where she needed to sign. The whole neighborhood watched like they were witnessing a season finale. Once the officers left, Karen stomped back into her house, slamming the door hard enough to shake the recycling bins. Curtains shifted across the street as neighbors whispered play-by-plays. Someone even clapped. A few minutes later, Karen attempted a dramatic exit in her car, but the battery was dead. The universe had jokes that day. Meanwhile, the narrator enjoyed the best night of sleep he'd had since moving into the neighborhood. No threats, no fake tickets, no plastic master keys, no Karen lurking like a raccoon who memorized HOA bylaws. When he woke up, he brewed his coffee slowly, savoring the peace. He slipped on sunglasses, grabbed his keys, and headed outside like a man ready to reclaim his driveway. He parked his SUV right back in the same spot Karen tried to declare HOA property. Proudly. Confidently. Like placing a victory flag on a conquered hill. The morning sun hit the freshly cleaned hood just right, making it gleam like a petty beacon of freedom. A few neighbors gave him a thumbs up. One guy walking his dog said, "Glad the sheriff handled business." Another neighbor waved from her porch like greeting royalty. Even the mailman paused to nod in solidarity. Across the street, Karen peeked through her blinds and instantly ducked the second she locked eyes with him. Her house looked like a ghost town now. No HOA clipboard hanging from her wrist, no binder slapping against her hip, no empty threats being launched like confetti. Just silence. Beautiful, peaceful silence. The neighborhood felt lighter. The tension evaporated. Kids rode their bikes again without being accused of speeding violations. A teenager parked slightly crooked and didn't get a pink slip taped to his bumper. A woman watered her plants without being asked for hydration compliance. For the first time in months, people genuinely smiled at each other without checking over their shoulders. The narrator stood beside his SUV taking it all in. The quiet. The relief. The feeling of winning without ever having to raise his voice. He looked at his reflection in the car window and chuckled to himself, thinking about how ridiculous the whole situation had been. A grown adult trying to open a sheriff's vehicle with a key meant for a shed lock. He took a sip of his coffee, breathed in the crisp morning air, and delivered his final thought in that clean, viral narrator tone. Karen thought her fake master key could unlock anything. Too bad the only thing it opened was a police case file with her name on it.